Welcome to UFO Line. I'm Gene Huff here with Boblazar. Bob, are you set for the show?
Yep.
Tonight we'll be taking calls on UFO-related topics, with tonight's emphasis being on hypnotic regression. So if you'd like to give us a call, just dial 731-1230 or hit star 1230 on your cell phone. Bob, back in 1989, when you had lost your security clearance and were no longer in the dispatch engineering program out at S4 in Central Nevada, you sought the help of a hypnotherapist, and that fact has been totally blown out of proportion by some of the wilder UFO researchers, to the point where they've said that your brain was actually turned on when you went to work and turned off when you left. Now, I'm not going to mention the name of the main culprit spreading that rumor. Excuse me, I've had a cold all week. So I obviously know these rumors aren't true, but could you clarify for the listeners exactly why you decided to seek some assistance through hypnotherapy?
The only reason I went there is because of the absolute wealth of information I was exposed to, from technical drawings to lengthy reports, and I just wanted to see what hypnosis would help me remember in depth, as far as recreating some of the drawings and things of that sort. But much of the stories that you've heard are really not true that pertain to this.
Okay. So anyway, after Bob made the decision to use hypnotherapy, he tried to contact this woman who had helped his ex-wife quit smoking. However, she was no longer there, and in what Bob and I both consider to be a fortunate coincidence, we were both introduced to a man who has both my and Bob's respect and trust, something that is almost unattainable.
All it does.
And that man is Las Vegas hypnotherapist Layne Keck. Welcome, Layne.
I'm happy to be here.
So, Layne, could you give us a brief explanation of what hypnotherapy actually is?
Hypnotherapy uses hypnosis to evoke a relaxation in a client, and in that relaxation, all of your senses are enhanced. You can hear better, you can feel better, you can remember things that may have escaped your conscious memory, but you can bring them back and recall them. Hypnotherapy is actually used to go back in to help a person achieve a goal. And whatever that goal is, if they're not achieving it in the way that they desire, you can use hypnotherapy and help them remove whatever blocks or fears are there. And once that's done, they can easily achieve that goal.
Okay. It seems to me that the abduction phenomena has brought hypnotic regression into the limelight more than ever before, and I'm sure you're aware of the accusations from people about hypnotherapists actually leading people back to memories that aren't really there. I know that type of activity is beneath you, but I'm curious as to whether there's a fine line between escorting someone back to a real memory and leading them back to a non-existent one. So is that such a fine line that it could inadvertently happen, or would it have to be malicious in the form of someone actually trying to exploit the poor soul seeking help?
Well, in both cases, I'm sure it has been maliciously used to exploit people, and there is a fine line that if the hypnotherapist is not trained and aware, they can certainly lead someone into believing that certain things occurred, things from their imagination they could register as a real happening. And that's why whenever I talk about hypnosis, I constantly remind people that they can lie under hypnosis just as easily as out, because they have the power of their own thinking, but they can also be misled by someone who is guiding them.
What do you think about self-hypnosis being used to try and retrieve, I guess specifically on UFO line, when you talk about abduction memories? What's your opinion of self-hypnosis for that?
That would seem like it would be so biased to me, because you're almost leading yourself into thinking something.
It lends itself to that, and that's why I do my best to lay out all of the possibilities. If this could just be imagination, that it could be, let me stop here and give an example of a case that I did. When a person came in, they thought they had been abducted because when they went to a movie and watched one of these abductions and someone being lifted up into a spacecraft, they would start to vomit and have violent reactions. Or when they would read about this in a book, they would have violent reactions. And in reality, when they came into the office, I explained that there's different possibilities. Let's look at it. Let's go back and recall what they did remember. But in doing that, what we found was that they had had a birth that was a cesarean delivery. And so their subconscious mind remembered their birth. And when someone came in and violently opened up their living area and lifted them out of that warm, safe, secure, peaceful place, they had a tremendous amount of fear from an early age level. And that translated into them later on seeing these movies of someone being lifted up, aliens lifting someone up, and that was where their real fear was coming from. They did not have an alien abduction at all. Mm-hmm. So there are different possibilities, and what I do is lay them out and then let that person go after those memories and get their idea, their understanding of what really happened, and try my best not to bias them in any way.
Mm-hmm. If anybody has any questions for Layne, they can give us a call at 731-1230 or on your cell phone, hit star 1230. Layne, does hypnotherapy have some practical limits, and do you ever see it being sensationalized too much or even being abused?
I do. I believe that it is extremely powerful, and most people would probably think I was a little strange for some of my beliefs. But at the same time, it is sensationalized quite often. And just as an example, you can use hypnosis to help someone stop smoking that's been smoking for years. And they can go in and say, hey, I had one session, that did it, no problem. Hypnotherapy is wonderful and great. And in reality, it will work that way, just one 15-minute session with a certain percentage of people. But most people have say with a cigarette, there's a tremendous emotional connection with that cigarette. And so a 15-minute session will only work temporarily, or it will not work at all. So the point is that when this hypnosis takes place and this person walks out, they may be a very small percentage of people who didn't have a strong emotional connection with that cigarette, and they'll go out and tell everyone, all you have to do is have a 10-minute hypnosis session, and you'll be free of the cigarette, which isn't the case at all. Sometimes it takes more in-depth work. So it can be sensationalized.
Mm-hmm. Layne, have you ever regressed someone that you, in your opinion, you think was actually abducted by aliens? I mean, I guess I'm not asking what your take is on it, but I mean, do you think that has actually occurred in anyone that you've regressed?
That's a fair question. I'll say first that they don't pay me to make a judgment. They pay me to guide them back. But I do have my own opinions of things. And yes, I would say that a small percentage of the people that I've worked with, and I've probably worked with 80 people, plus or minus a few.
Oh, that many?
Yes. And I believe that there were a small percentage that were actually abducted. Now, I can't swear to it that it happened on a stack of Bibles, but from all indications and all the signs that I look for, there are some that I truly believe have been abducted, yes.
I just have such a hard time buying that, but a lot of people have a hard time buying my story. I think we got a caller on.
Yes, go ahead and take a call. Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Hi, this is Glenn Campbell.
Glenn, how are you?
Hi. The obvious question is, what does Layne think of Bob and Bob's story and Bob's session?
My reaction to Bob the very first time he came into my office was, wow, what have I gotten myself into now? Bob's story did stretch me until Bob came in, I believe it was 1989. I had not had one client. I think I'd been practicing as a clinical hypnotherapist for 8 or 9 years, and I hadn't had one client who had come in who had thought they had been abducted or had been abducted. But after Bob came on and I worked with him, and then the resulting media coverage after that, I've had, like I said, probably 80 people who I've worked with since. So this was something new for me when Bob walked into the office. And I handled it the same way that I handle every client that comes in. We go back and try and remove the blocks. He was wanting to remember certain things, and we go back and remove the blocks which kept those memories from coming forth. And there was a tremendous amount of fear and imprinting and some techniques that the government had used that I recognized that not too many would recognize. And
what are those techniques? What were the blocks?
Well, the obvious ones were fear, threats to his life, to his family's life, that type of thing. There was something that I call the Orion response. When Bob described for me these techniques of they were shouting threats, and I believe it was like pointing with their fingers on his chest and making loud threats at the same time, things like that. That bypasses our ability to block things from the subconscious. It gets the message straight in, and if you do it loud enough or fast enough, it's done with either movement or sound, then those techniques are very powerful. And as he described those to me, I recognized them right away and knew that they were using some very powerful techniques. And with Bob, there's a lot of signs that I look for that most people probably wouldn't be aware of. One thing I remember, Bob told me this one story about when he was in this certain area, and they threw a golf ball, I believe it was, at the reactor, and it bounced off of this field, and I believe it broke or chipped a tile on the ceiling. And every time he told that story, it came up, 2 or 3 times over a number of sessions. And every time he told it, he had exactly the same reaction. And in hypnosis, those reactions are very evident. And in doing that, he was doing the same thing repeatedly every time. He had the same reaction every time over something seemingly insignificant. But those are some of the things that I look at.
It is not really possible to fake those reactions?
Yes, it is, but they were so numerous in so many places that he couldn't have done in my opinion, he couldn't have done his homework enough to have pulled it off.
Also, Glenn, at this point in time, Bob's story wasn't even public. No one other than just those in Bob's immediate environment knew who he was or anything about his story. So it would have been way premeditated for Bob to be trying to fool Layne into thinking that someone threw a golf ball off of the reactor and hit the ceiling tile. That's for sure.
What was the reaction there? Was that, oh dear, we're going to get in trouble?
No, the reaction more was humor. And sometimes when our emotions don't know how to handle things, people laugh instead of cry. Or when people get, when they're threatened, sometimes they'll go, and it was more of a humor, which showed me that that influenced him tremendously, but it was registering as a ha-ha, and it was covering up the real emotions of probably his feelings of what have I gotten myself into. This is, something that is weird, strange. so, in that way also, it was indicative of covering up those emotions that any normal person would have felt under that situation.
That's very good. I thank you very much.
All right, Glenn, thanks for the call.
Layne, we got a person that called in wanting to know if you can address your credentials, education required to become a clinical hypnotherapist, and your background experience and all that.
I do have a BS degree, but it's in business management with a minor in psychology. My real training came probably about 17 years ago, thereabouts, when I went into a hypnotherapist as a client and had a couple of healings in my body, and it so impressed me I wanted to learn more, never thinking I would ever be a hypnotherapist. But in doing that and continuing to learn from this hypnotherapist, who is Helen Bauckham, that I work with now at Serena's Clinical Hypnosis, she has taught out at the university and at the community college. I took all of her courses, but more of my learning came from being in her chair working on myself than came from the actual classes. Although they're very important, I've read all the books, I've taken the trainings and certifications from the different organizations, National Society of Hypnotherapists, train and test. There's licensing that goes on with that. It's actually licensed by the city in Las Vegas. Certification comes from individual organizations, not a statewide organization that's recognized like a psychiatrist or a psychologist. But that training with Helen went on for years and years, and since then I've taught classes myself, and I've held vice presidency of national organizations, and I've really put forth the testing of hypnotherapists through that organization, so that not just anyone can slip in and become a hypnotherapist without knowledge.
Layne, back in 1989, when Bob and I showed up at your door, his story wasn't really public knowledge, and you couldn't have had any idea what he was involved in. I'm wondering what your thoughts were when you heard what he was telling you, and at what point you really understood when you grasped what his story was, that he was actually working on ET discs. And I remember the look on your face, but I certainly don't know what
take a while.
the thoughts were in your head, because this was certainly an instance where you weren't leading anyone anywhere. You didn't know where he was going, really. I wonder what your thoughts were on that.
In the beginning, it was just another case of someone wanting to recall memories that had been somehow suppressed. And I remember sitting at the desk, at my desk, and Bob was talking about these pictures of desks, I thought he said, out where he worked. And he started talking about the desks, and I was, discs didn't mean anything to me at that point. And I misunderstood him, and when I realized he was saying discs, then I thought, wow. And then as we went on, it hit me like a ton of bricks. Wow. Yeah, here I am on the edge, and when you guys came into the office, you didn't impress me as any weirdos, or you were very serious about what you wanted to achieve, and you certainly grilled me to find out my credentials and background. And so, I thought, this is legitimate. They're wanting to find something out. They're not just in here they didn't spend their money to come into my office to try and pull something over on me. And as we continued, I realized he was very serious about this and was working to, uncover these memories. And I realized also that he came in to get some of the memories. I didn't know the whole story. I was just helping him in the beginning to pull up some of these memories, but I certainly didn't know the whole story. So as it unraveled, I was shocked and extremely interested.
Okay. If you've got a question for Layne Keck or boblazar, give us a call at 731-1230, or if you're on a cell phone, hit star 1230. Let's go ahead and take another call. Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Hello. I'd like to address this to Mr. Lazar and the hypnotherapist.
Okay. Layne Keck is his name.
Excuse me?
Layne Keck is the hypnotherapist.
Okay, excuse me, I'm very sorry.
That's fine.
I'd like to address the possibility of hypnotic suggestion for Mr. Lazar.
As far as what?
As far as, for example, many of the things you've seen or the fear that you've been given is kind of, it doesn't seem like it's what's the word I'm looking for? It doesn't seem consistent. For example, they suppose they erased you from society almost, right?
For the most part, yeah.
Okay, but now we're talking about the government. We're talking about the people at the Department of Energy. Why do they overlook the fact of phone books and yearbooks and yet allow you to approach the media with something that's possibly the most damaging material concerning national security that we've ever had? It almost sounds like it's instrumentative. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but I mean, why did they overlook several things like that? I really don't know. I mean, that's your guess is as good as mine. I doubt.
Is it possible that the information that you have is meant to be carried by you?
That's possible.
It's really
I mean,
heavy-duty information. I mean, it's the national security risk. It just seems too far to let somebody just go to the news with it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but it is such an easy thing to discredit. You know, it's one of the things that they said there. It's the most highest security program and secrets that are kept there, but they are the easiest thing in the world to keep quiet.
Right.
One of the things
you were saying that you were taught basically with hypnosis, right?
No.
He just used hypnosis to recall some of the material that he was shown at his work, and we just used the hypnosis to help him recall. He recalled most everything consciously already before he ever walked into my office.
Yeah, I wanted to redraw several schematics and a couple other things.
Just go back and get more detail about the things that he did remember. And your question, I remember Bob asking that very same question to me. He said, do you think it's possible that they just gave me this information so I would have it and they may want to get information out? Is that possible? Can we find out in hypnosis if that could be done?
Did you ever find anything to show that he may have been subject to a hypnotic suggestion?
Not in the sense that we're talking about here. All of the fear techniques that they used, of course, is in a way hypnotic suggestion, but we could not find anything where they tried to hypnotize him to tell him to go out and reveal certain information or anything like that. That was not the case at all.
Okay. Lastly, if I could, I have one more question from Mr. Lazar. Kind of off the subject, I spoke with him last week on the air, and it was he had a statement regarding fixed-wing aircraft. I know it's a little bit off the subject, but if it's okay, I'd like to go ahead and ask.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
You stated last week that us being able to engineer non-wing aircraft capable of the feats that are being seen was highly unlikely, but I've been doing some reading, and I've been kind of keeping my eye out on things, and there's some things that point that we could for some time. And have you ever heard of frozen smoke?
Yeah, that's we call that the clear stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's materials like
it's called aerogel is what the real name is.
Right. Okay. There's substances like frozen smoke and ceramite and a whole bunch of different really super lightweight alloys.
Well, it's not an alloy.
No, there are other alloys, though. Cermet's not an alloy, but there are alloys that they're using that are very lightweight and highly heat resistant.
Okay.
Used for these types of aircraft. Secondly, engine efficiency is really getting dynamic and out there.
Oh, I agree with that, but still, you are orders of magnitude still away from the capability of these crafts.
And flying with no wings.
Well, like for example, the F-117 is very unaerodynamic.
Right, if the computer fails, the plane falls out of the sky.
Can correct. And I'm thinking, you position thrusters, you position engines in different places, you can pretty much make anything fly. And if it's lightweight enough and heat resistant enough, and you have remote control, suddenly G-forces aren't that big of a factor, and neither is speed.
Well, I have to kind of disagree with that. First of all, if you eliminate the thrusters, nothing's going to fly.
Right.
Okay, and that's what we're dealing with in these craft.
Right, well, I'm not saying eliminate the thrusters. I'm saying they're becoming very small and very efficient.
Oh, I absolutely agree. I mean, one of the points that I have said or brought up before is that people have claimed this technology is, I think I even heard some other UFO researchers say it's 1 billion years ahead of us or 500,000 years ahead of us, and I don't think that's the case. I think, and eventually what we're seeing may be, 100 or so years off in the future, if even that much, looking at the rate of the way technology is moving along right now. But I still think with what we have now, it is completely impossible to even come close to emulating the operation of these craft.
Okay, now that brings me to my second point.
But we're going to kind of have to cut you off there because the lines are getting full, and we got to let some other callers in here. But thanks for your call.
Okay.
Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I have some questions for Mr. Lazar concerning maybe some recent memories that he may have from working in space.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, all right.
Well, what I'd like to know is if there was any information divulged to him as to the culture of these beings that supposedly operate these craft, and if of the 9 craft that he supposedly saw, were they all from the same culture or were they from different cultures?
Well, first of all, they really didn't divulge much information about, what was the first question about concerning the culture of the beings?
Well, was any information divulged to him as to where they were from or how they live or what they're all about?
Very little. The only hint that I got was that the craft apparently came from the Zeta Reticuli star system. So I assume that the beings that were in it came from there too, but there was no direct inference to that. As far as the crafts themselves, I was not allowed to inspect the other ones. However, I was told that they all had the same power plant and propulsion system. And assuming that's true, you can only assume one of two things: that either the craft were made in the same place and there are different models of it, or that these craft are from different places, and essentially you have a subcontractor producing the power plants and engines for these things.
Similar to what we do here on Earth.
Right, but that's the only two theories I can come up with.
Okay. The last question I have for you is, have you seen the recent alien autopsy videos, and did you see any photographs of the alien beings, and do they match up?
I did see an autopsy photograph. It was a bust shot. It looked nothing like what I saw on TV on the Fox channel. I find that very difficult to believe for several reasons. But I don't know if that's we want to go into that right now.
Okay.
But,
I understand.
Yeah, I personally don't believe that to be authentic. I guess I can touch on a couple of them. I mean, one of them is, and they're minor points, but they seem to annoy me, that in that time, and even today, you would not have gone through something like that without taking still photographs. I think you kind of have to agree with that, because that film is certainly no documentation.
Sure,
for
but that could have all been done first before that brief autopsy was done. I believe that was a preliminary autopsy, not the actual autopsy.
No, some of the photographs would have to have been taken during that.
Well, you didn't see all of the room in their autopsy either.
But you didn't see any flashes from camera bulbs either, or a photographer.
You wouldn't necessarily see that if the room was lit enough.
Oh, I don't think so. Not in 47. I think the only way you're going to see a photograph developed properly is with a flash bulb then. But, I mean, there are just several minor points like that, and from what I understand, that, what was it, $1 million or something close to that these guys were paid for this?
Something was offered.
Well, that's true, too.
It seems to me
But see, that offer, from what I understand, was put up before
what are your thoughts?
Did you hear about the counteroffer that came through from unnamed Washington lawyers to buy the film before it was ever released?
No, I've heard other stories, but I don't know, you don't know if they're authentic. I mean, and also they say that Kodak has analyzed the film, and as it turned out, Kodak still has an open offer to analyze it. They have never looked at it. They say they can conclusively prove it one way or another. The only person that looked at it was a guy that either used to work or does work for Kodak, and it was in his personal opinion. As far as the special effects people, that guy they talked to that said, boy, we can't do this, I had the opportunity of speaking to one of the special effects people that are working on my movie who knows the guy pretty well. And off camera, he said, oh, yeah, absolutely, we could do something like that. So, there's a lot of conflicting information, and it's hard. My gut feeling is it seems like it's bunk, but, who am I to criticize anyone?
Okay.
It seems to me that if someone was going to perpetrate a fraud strictly for money, and if that was going to be made of rubber, let's say, that they would have replicated a typical gray, a gray that, how everyone perceives a gray as emaciated toddler's torso and the big head. I can't understand why anyone going for money would have made that alien the way it appears.
That's the problem I have with it. And then to top it off, the critics both disagree. If you talk to special effects experts, they'll say, yeah, I can do it. And if you talk to forensic experts, they'll say, well, this is an altered body. So what's the truth? What is it?
Yeah, it's going to be one of those
Why would you alter a body by adding extra fingers instead of making it easier just by cutting the thumb off and having 4 fingers like everyone describes?
Right. And in this day and age, though, really, it would probably be difficult to find an honest special effects expert who would say, I can't do that.
True.
They can do everything. Almost everything can be faked, and we've gone round and round about things like this before when it comes to photographic evidence. When you consider state-of-the-art technology as it exists nowadays, how could there'll be a time in the not too distant future when anyone what I'm referring to here is that Bob read in some reports that that these aliens had presented photographic evidence of the Earth over 10,000 years old. And I don't know that anyone could present any form of photographic evidence that could prove anything to anyone, considering that everyone can be faked.
That's true, too. Well, we'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks for the call. Okay, go ahead. You're on UFO line.
Hello?
Are you there?
Couldn't hold on any longer.
Hello?
Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Yeah. One thing I noticed about that alien autopsy thing that so far I've heard nobody talk about, in some scenes they show that leg that was all mangled or whatever it was. It was on the left leg in some scenes, and on some scenes it was on the right leg.
That I don't recall.
Watch it. If you're on tape, pay attention to that real close.
That seems like an awful big mistake that someone screw up on.
But I've seen it. We've seen it over and over again.
Really, it wasn't from, because it was shot on film, it is possible that during the transfer the film might have flipped over. I mean, were there any other objects in the room that might have reversed?
Well, I don't. I guess that's possible.
I mean, I'm just trying to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, well, I thought of that myself, and I guess I just haven't analyzed that close enough to correlate other objects along with it.
We're not as familiar with the film as you. Are you saying that in some frames one leg is hurt and the other one is not in disrepair?
That's right.
And in other frames the injured leg is now repaired and the other leg is injured?
That's right. It's on the left leg in some scenes. It's on the right leg in other scenes.
So what's your opinion of the autopsy, Fraud?
Well, if that's true, then I'd have to say, yeah, there's some kind of
I'd have to agree with that too.
So I think that someone needs. I've never heard of anybody talking about that yet, and of all the critics. So maybe that is maybe they have reversed that film, and that's already been taken into account. Nobody's mentioned that. But it seems like somebody should have said something about that. I'm sure I'm not the only one who saw it. So, being over that millions of people saw it, I'm sure there's been a lot of people wonder about that.
Yeah, there's certainly been a lot of hot debate about it.
So
a lot of people really aren't looking for anything to refute it. They'd love it for it to be true, so they're not being too critical.
Yeah, I guess so. Anyway, I just thought throwing my 2 cents on that anyway.
All right, well, thanks for the call. Okay, go ahead. You're on UFO line.
Hello. I was wondering about where you stand as far as the idea. It seems, Bob, that you are more concerned with the hardware and the technology
I am.
than the question of is there actual extraterrestrial visitation. Now, what I want to know is, Bob and the other gentleman's name's Dennis?
No, Layne Keck.
I know there's Layne Keck there, and then
Gene Huff is name.
Gene Huff. Okay. Well, now, Gene, I heard you say that you thought that alien abductions was mostly a bunch of BS.
No, I didn't say that. I think George Knapp said that last week, and it was HS for horseshit. But but no, that was not us. That was he said a lot of it. He didn't say all of it, and I think his point was that as Layne is represented here tonight, some people may have been abducted, but not everyone who says they've been abducted has necessarily been abducted, and I think you'd probably agree with that, wouldn't you?
Oh, sure, I'd have to agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the question of, it seems like, Mr. Bob, that you usually give a standard question as far as when somebody tries to ask you about, is there such a thing as extraterrestrial intelligence visiting this planet from either another solar system or another galaxy? And I was wondering if both of you...
I give a standard answer?
Well, it seems like you say, well, your guess is as good as mine. In other words, you haven't actually seen them, so you really don't know.
Well, that's exactly why I like to kind of draw the line between, what I know for a fact and, what might be true.
Mm-hmm.
The information he saw implied that, I certainly think that it's true, but Bob doesn't want everyone hanging their hat on just some words he read on paper. So he was in a flying disc, and he worked on the propulsion system. He can say, yes, this is here, and the report said it was from Zeta Reticuli, but he didn't go there and verify that as the point of origin. So I get frustrated with him just like you do, and that he draws the line there, and we all want him to proceed and expound a little bit, but maybe it's good that he stops there.
Well, can I ask the question of both of you gentlemen? Do you believe that we are being visited by extraterrestrial intelligence that are beings similar to us from another solar system or another galaxy at this time?
What, similar to us?
Well, let's say that they're entities as far as they're not spiritual beings or angels or anything of that nature.
Well, about as far as I would stretch is to say that I firmly believe that did occur. Whether that's occurring now, I don't know.
And I say yes.
You say yes.
Yeah.
So what do you base that on then?
Well, just the breadth of the information coming from around the entire planet. Again, I don't believe everyone who said they were abducted has been abducted, but I don't think absolutely everyone is lying either. And look at the pictures. Look at everything from military and civilian pilots, from even Navy personnel out on the ocean. People like Layne Keck, who certainly doesn't lead anyone down the road and sees 80 people and maybe won't vouch for 70 of them, but the other 10, it appears to him something happened. And I think it's the weight of the collective information leads me to believe that this isn't a mass hallucination, something's going on.
And then there's the one that there are an eternal amount of stars out there. You know, the chances of some other life forms being out there other than ourselves.
It's guaranteed.
It's really, as far as sheer numbers alone. But I wanted to address Layne as far as he was talking about self-hypnosis.
That's Layne.
Layne, I'm sorry. Layne, you were saying that self-hypnosis really may not be that effective. And you had somebody on the show last week that was saying that they were using a tape that was opening up the mind to reveal a possible abduction scenario. And you were claiming, Layne, that self-hypnosis may not be enough.
Well, let me address that. First, I have to say that I believe that self-hypnosis is the absolute best tool that we have to go in and find the truth as to what it is that we've experienced. We have that ability to go in and pick it apart if we'll just ask, seek, and knock, and if we know how to do it. So it's the best tool that is available, and it is effective. And yes, it can be used in a way that can mislead, and we can mislead ourselves, as many of us do or have done. So we are capable of doing that as well. But I do have to say that it's the best tool available, and I believe in it.
Okay, let's go on to the next caller. Lines are pretty
Thanks for the call. Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, many years ago, in fact it was in 1972, I watched a flying disc. It stood still over the Santa Ana Newport Freeway interchange, and it sat there for about 20 minutes. And you could see the rib understructure on it. It was not shining, but it looked like reflected firelight.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden it just shot off southeast toward the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Another time we were in Hammett and we saw this, three of us watched this, it looked like a huge chicken coop. How it flew, I will never
flying chicken
It
coop?
was the chicken coop, Bob.
Yeah, and my sister saw the same thing in Montana. It looked like a large rectangular crate, almost like a boxcar, and it came down over San Jacinto Mountain.
Was this in the daytime?
Yes, broad daylight. It just floated down over San Jacinto Mountain and it disappeared. But I wanted to ask you about the propulsion on these. As I understand it, it starts with a very high voltage electrostatic field.
Well, there is one present on the craft. But
yes. And then it employs the waveguide to create the...
the waveguide guides the gravity wave, essentially.
Yeah. And then it uses cavity resonators to amplify or attenuate the high-frequency waves?
Not exactly, no.
I understood that this was how it propels it in different directions by these 3 or 4 waveguides.
Yeah, in this one particular craft, there are 3 gravity amplifiers, 3 waveguides, and it moves in a very unique fashion. To move forward, for instance, 1 or 2 of the waveguides are swung out in front of the craft, and it creates a distortion in front of it. And because the distortion, it kind of acts like a gravity well, almost like a downhill, and the craft rolls forward, or essentially slides forward in the gravity distortion. That's how the craft moves around in the Omicron configuration, the more or less low power mode, if you will.
Doesn't it use the cavity resonators?
Nope.
There weren't any on this one?
Well, not that.
Go see Michelle at Parma Ristorante, 1750 South Rainbow. Bob, you and I have been to Parma with Steven Seagal and Kelly LeBrock, Zachariah Sitchin, George Knapp, numerous others, and I've never heard anything but compliments. How about you?
No, I got to agree with that. It's a great...
All right, so go see Michelle if you get a chance. Let's go ahead and take another call. Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Yeah, there was something I want to ask Bob.
Go ahead.
for some time, and I forgot all about it until I hung up a few minutes ago. I think it was John Lear who talked about the Buckyball. You know what that is?
Yeah, it's a Buckminster fullerene.
It's what?
That's a Buckminster fullerene. It's a carbon molecule.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
What did John Lear have to say about that?
How would he even know what a Buckyball was?
Well, I was unclear what it was. That's why I'm asking you.
Oh. But what did he say about it?
Well, I don't know. It was just some kind of weird, mysterious thing that, I wasn't sure what it was, but that's why I was calling.
Yeah, it's a carbon molecule named after Buckminster Fuller, but it is a cool name, a Buckyball.
Uh-huh.
So that's the...
Well, that answers your question.
So what does it do?
Nothing.
It's a molecule.
Just a molecule.
Yeah, it just hangs out there and bees.
It's like some of us.
Right.
All right, well, I know it was a little off subject, but I had to clear that up. Thanks.
Very good. Okay, go ahead. You're on UFO line.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I've got a question for Layne. Hypothetically, let's say somebody comes into your office and unbeknownst to you, they work currently out at the classified section of the test site or whatever, and they're having some problems that seem to be completely unrelated to anything involving what we're talking about tonight, and then as you delve in deeper, you start to recover things that are obviously involved in high-level national security. What kind of a moral dilemma does that put you in, and what do you do?
That is an excellent question. And what I'm there to do is to help that person to achieve an emotional balance within themselves. And what we would do each step of the way is just weigh it out. And I would certainly draw it to the attention of the client if we were getting into some areas that I knew were classified. And it would be an individual call according to my integrity, or I would probably say the Holy Spirit would guide me. And I would not go after any of this information for my own use, only if they were consciously aware that it was important for their healing, for their emotional or mental healing. Would I then address it, and it would be on a case-by-case basis, and whatever, well, the only reason I talk about what happened with Bob Lazar is because he has given me permission to do so. He went media-wide with it, and I haven't, I'll give you case histories, but never any names.
And what if some representatives of the government come and see you and say, we want to know what you've been talking about with one of our people? Are you permitted under confidentiality to not discuss it, or that could get to be a real mess?
Actually, I've always wondered that too.
It could get to be a real mess, and Bob would bring me something in jail, I'm sure, if they allowed him to do so.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
Okay, go ahead. You're on UFO line.
Hello?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm wondering. I was in contact with a person who was working up at Tonopah Experimental Range, and they were a radar operator. At times, they would find themselves going up there and checking in at the facilities up there. And the next thing you know, they knew it would be 6 months later, and they had completed their assignment. They were headed back to Vegas.
Wait. What do you mean the next thing they knew it would be 6 months later?
Literally, the next thing they knew it would be 6 months later. The only time that they've had any kind of aggression that has been done, they remembered being in a clinical office with a nurse and a doctor approaching them with a needle. The nurse was gently restraining the person to kind of like tell them not to be nervous, and the doctor proceeded to inject them in the back of the head. Now, I understand that there are so many people working on classified projects that you can't send spies out and tap that many phones to make sure they're not talking. So doesn't it make sense that they would develop some sort of way to make sure that these people have some sort of a memory lapse?
Well, that would be awfully convenient, but
with modern pharmaceuticals, that's entirely possible, is it not?
That I don't know. It would seem like that would be very difficult.
Do you think it's in their own best interest to try and develop something like that?
I don't think so.
More spies to spy on people.
Well, I mean, if I was them, I would get more spies to spy on people, because I imagine you would cause a lot of personal conflict in someone's mind. It's the only thing they can remember.
Do you think they care about that? Honestly?
No, I don't think they care about anything.
Bob,
you just answered my question.
Didn't I read that that they electronically monitored the phone lines, and then a computer actually searches the audible for certain keywords, and to decide whether they
actually I saw that on I think an episode of 60 Minutes where they were trying to track down some drug dealers, and they I think they had a large computer system set up that they were doing it in Colombia or something to that effect, and they borrowed some equipment from our intelligence agencies, and it would scan all the phone lines in Colombia and look for specific words and just pick them out. And so I imagine they could use something similar to that, you know.
But since so much communication is done with people that have classified clearances and people who don't, and that maybe want to know what's going on, like you gentlemen apparently do since you have the show, that a lot of these conversations would be carried on over, not over the phone, but in person.
Right.
So...
yeah, it would be to their benefit to develop something like that.
Well, this is the indication that I've received from more than one individual, and I think it's something that...
that would be pretty scary if that, in fact, was the case.
It's very frightening, just as the rest of the whole phenomenon is to some people, so...
I'm not so sure I would want someone handling classified information that was very important who had been given these drugs. I don't think that these drugs would be developed to the point where you could trust anyone to do the proper job when they were on these drugs, if they would exist.
Okay, thanks for the call. We got one more caller here.
Go ahead, you're on UFO line.
Listen, I was abducted. I had children by these aliens.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Anyway, I was just calling.
Layne is listening. Of course, everyone, this is George Knapp.
I'm listening to the show, and it's great, but I just think Bob is really being mean to these people that are calling in with, you know, they're trying to be nice, they have legitimate concerns, and he's being mean to them.
Next caller.
Next caller.
Hey, George, thanks for the great plug on the news last night.
Well, of course, you deserve it. How's it going?
It's going great. We get some good questions. Layne's a great guest.
Always.
Yeah, thanks for all those people that you send me. I think you screen a lot of them. I handle a lot of your entertainment, I think.
Give me my cut, Layne. I'll talk to you guys after the show.
Okay. Thanks, George. Okay, go ahead. You're on UFO line.
Hello.
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, as related to one of the previous callers, I used to teach a course at one of the institutions of higher learning here, and one of the students approached me one time who said that she worked out at the Tonopah Range, and she told me that she went to the airport, got on an airplane, and then came home and did not remember what she did all day, and she was very emotional about this, for whatever that's worth to you.
That's just really strange. I wonder what's going on, or what was going on up at the Tonopah Test Range. I mean, for all I knew that was going on up there around that time, or in the past anyway, was the Self project. In fact, I had a friend that worked up there. But this is the first I've heard of anything like that going around.
So you don't have any information as far as, you know, drugs or hypnosis being used for security reasons for people working up there?
No, I don't. I would actually like to find out more about it myself.
Okay.
Well, thanks for the call.
Okay, well, we're going to pretty much wind it up here for UFO Line this week. I'd like to thank our guest, Layne Keck. Layne, thanks for all of your help.
It's been a pleasure.
If anyone would like to get a hold of Layne, they can reach him at Serena's Hypnosis Clinic. I believe that number is 384-4420.
Correct.
And, of course, Bob Lazar and I'll be back next Friday night at 11, so please join us on UFO Line. We'll see you then.